Hello and welcome to the program. Time and time again, the federal government has had on plans to make the agricultural sector bloom again now to become a viable alternative to oil. But what is surprising is that for a sector seen to be that promising, the government has continued to underfund it. In 2020, only 183 billion was allocated to the agriculture sector in the federal budget. And going by the proposals presented by President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly for 2021, the allocation is lower at 179 billion. This means the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development will get only 1.5% of the federal budget for the coming year. The allocation is significantly less than the 10% Nigeria and other African countries agreed to set aside now annually for the development of agriculture in a bid to promote food security. Now, that agreement is, of course, known as the Maputo Agreement of the African Union. Now, despite signing the Maputo Agreement now in 2003, actually, the Nigerian government is yet to implement the treaty. Joining me now to discuss this is the Executive Director, Center for Social Justice, Eze Onyekwere. Mr. Onyekwere, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We are now committing less than 2% of our budget to Agric, yet we are saying we want to diversify our economy to agriculture. I mean, how does it show we're serious at all about diversifying this economy?
Yes, an unfortunate scenario that we have 61 federal budget to the agri sector after signing up to the Maputo Agreement, which talks about 10% of the budget being given to agriculture. Indeed, some of us are not that ambitious to canvass for 10%. We are asking for 50% of the Malabo Agreement, which is about 5% only to agriculture. So if we are thinking of a sector that is employing over 50% of Nigerians and contributing over 23% of the GDP, then we must find a way to fund this sector beyond this lackadaisical attitude to funding.
So, I mean, for me, it's really quite baffling. Last year it was, or this year I should say, 2%, and we've always had it at 2%, and now 2021 is going to be 1.5%. And yet you have a situation where the recurrent budget is really, really high. I mean, how much we're spending in terms of the recurrent expenditure now. How do we turn our agriculture sector around if we're not able to provide the kind of monies you would need to turn things around in that sector?
Well, even the challenges of the sector is beyond the funding, the little funding. Even the little that is provided, are we getting full value out of the money? Are we getting our priorities right? Are we investing in the growth drivers for the sector? These are the questions we need to resolve. Yes, the vote is little, but we have a scenario where we have in the budget maize value chain, wheat value chain, groundnut value chain, cassava yam value chain. And if you know the concept of a value chain, you are talking of the time you start planting, up to the time you harvest, up to the time you store, you process, add more value, and even market it. And we've been doing this year after year, and no value actually has been added in terms of moving away from raw produce to adding real value to it, or even meeting up export criteria in terms of phytosanitary.
Do you think this in any way justifies the need for this loan that the finance minister talked about, even though the National Assembly has said, look, the loan request has actually not been presented to it for approval? I'm talking about the Brazilian loan now. What is known as the Brazilian loan now? Is it of $1.2 billion?
Yes, I don't think that loan makes sense considering our current circumstances. Nigeria has borrowed a lot of money which we are not even able to repay. Out of the 2.52 trillion which we made in January to August, we used 2.137 to pay back debt. So we had roughly about 380 billion left when we finished paying servicing debt of real money which we had to pay federal workers, run overhead, as well as draw down on capital expenditure. So we can't continue borrowing again. What are we even borrowing from Brazilians? We are going to we went to a company that is producing tractors and this kind of equipment, which has a lot of stock, which is also considering the global economic meltdown.
Sorry to interject.
We are now going to take those tractors.
Could we say, I mean, because when you look at the budget, you look at the budget for agriculture now, just around 1.5% of the budget. Could we say, well, because the government is actually handicapped, it hasn't got enough money, then it just may not be a bad idea to borrow money to fund agriculture, because that's what the government says the loan is for.
No. You ask yourself, how do you want to repay the money before you borrow? And where are you going to invest the money to make sure you do it?
You're basically saying
those machines they want to borrow money to procure can be produced locally. That's what we are saying. What does it take to do tractors and all those equipment and machinery? The major thing is the tractor sales. We have vehicle producing plants in Nigeria. We can commission them to do that and have the research institute build all those things at the back of it, which we can use to do reduced base or plant crops. So these things are not rocket science that we cannot do locally. Why should we go and borrow a billion naira for something that we cannot even say what exactly we are going to use it to do? So if it doesn't make sense to borrow, we have to fall back on our local capacity to be able to produce these things. That's what I'm saying.
What do you think we need to do to turn the state of our agriculture around? Because whether we like it or not, to a large extent, our agriculture is still subsistence, if you like, and you know, mechanization is still a very gradual process. And if you do not have mechanized agriculture, and as you just pointed out, you do not connect you know, the farm to the factory, then it's difficult to see how Nigeria would be able to scale and then make something tangible out of agriculture.
We must take our steps, you know, sequence the way we operate. If you look at the agriculture sector, close to 80-something% of it is informal. The formal sector of agriculture is less than 10% of the entire agri production in Nigeria. And who are the dominant people in this sector? They are small-scale women farmers. So we need to recognize these people in the budget and start making provisions. We don't need so much big tractors now. We need gender-friendly equipment, like the power tiller, okay? Those equipments that you can push, which can be sourced locally, that go beyond the traditional hoe and knife, so that the women farmers can become more productive. The local farmers can become more productive. And in the course of time, you begin to progress and move into all these big, large tractorization. So we need to find out who exactly is doing the farming. What do this category of farmers need to be able to improve their production? And then we must remove the politicization of agricultural facilities. All these anchor borrowers program, all these loans are given. Make sure it reaches the real farmers, not the political farmers. And when we do that, we are bound to increase our productivity. We are bound to add value. And at the end of the day, you could imagine how our agriculture will grow in leaps and bounds. It's not about going out there to borrow any money. Look at the issue. Look at the belt around Plateau State, Benue. The quantum of food that waste every year. The machines you need to start doing food juices are not just big complex machines. These things can be fabricated at the local institutes, you know, Shodi, in other parts of Nigeria, several institutes under the Ministry of Science and Technology and under the Ministry of Agriculture. You begin to package them. You begin to add value. So borrowing is totally out of it. Let us manage the little we have and make sure we get the best value for money out of it.
And one other point to one other issue now to point out is the fact that it appears even the states are not doing enough, and that's just the truth, because you would expect that the states would do more than enough in terms of agriculture. There are states that you would consider agrarian states. They are just not taking advantage now of the agrarian nature of their states. They're basically not investing in agriculture. And the truth is, if the states do not actually step up to the plate, it's difficult to see how things can change.
I perfectly agree with you. Agriculture is done in far-flung localities, in local governments, communities, and within states. Indeed, it's because of the skilled nature of our federation that the federal government has a lot of money to be investing in agriculture. This should have been a local enterprise. So the expectation is collaboration through the National Council on Agriculture between the federal government, the state government, and the local government. Things like extension services should be done locally. So the federal government should divest itself of these huge resources and make sure that they go to the areas where they are most needed. Like even giving people weather reports and breaking it down for the local farmers to use, particularly in this era of great changes in the climate change. These are the kind of things that are needed. If you go to research institutes, you go to universities of agriculture, they should connect with communities, their local communities, to find out what are the major challenges facing local agriculture and begin to take steps through research to solve those problems. And once you have people identifying the challenges and you are solving those problems, as soon as you finish your research, you already have local off-takers who will take it up from you and run with it and use it to solve problems. But we have research institutes funded year after year, but they have not been able to find anything, no deliverables that impact on the local communities where they stay. And so this is the challenge. It's about the need to restructure the entire agricultural value chain, the entire agricultural sector, the way we spend our money, where we concentrate the money. For instance, the whole voice of the Minister of Agriculture, they kept about 54% of the capital votes at the head office. How can you keep 54% of the capital votes of agriculture in Abuja when agriculture is done in very far-flung parts of Nigeria? You want to coordinate everything from Abuja. It does not work, and it has not worked. So that is part of the challenge.
But then does anything actually stop the state governors from actually investing in agriculture? Because
nothing stops them. But if they don't have the resources, they don't have as much resources as the federal government. So that is also a challenge for them.
Well, I understand the issue about resources, but you would also expect that that states
even the little they have, they should invest. I agree with you. They should manage it more prudently, but they've not been doing so.
Yeah, and that's just the truth, because the impression is that it's just the federal government, and the truth is that states can actually make the difference and begin to earn some very good money from agriculture. So it's actually a surprise that you see agrarian states in the north, in the south, and everywhere. They're basically not doing anything and essentially waiting for federal allocation and what they're able to raise from taxes, from markets, and all of that. They're actually not investing in agriculture. So it's
right.
It's really a worry. Thank you very much, Eze Onekweru, for your time, and thank you very much for your contribution.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. On DEJI360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band.
DEJI360, providing clarity to issues.